Hi, this is Tiffany, and we're here today to talk to you about the spring Chinook that are spawning behind me with help from Emily from Mid-Columbia Fisheries and Mrs. Jurgen. We're going to talk to you today about their life cycle and what they're doing out there. So let's start with a little splash. There might be a little fighting, there might be a little digging. Just kind of keep your eye on those guys while I'm talking to you. And what we're seeing here is one female and one male. You'll see the female move up into the head of her red. The red is not the color red, but Norwegian word R-E-D-D, red, meaning fish nest. And you can tell it's her fish nest because all of the rocks are all cleaned off. So you'll see all the different colors of the rocks as opposed to all the rest of the river is covered in this brown, green algae. So where you can see the individual colors of the rocks, that's where the fish nest is, that's where the eggs are laid, and that's where she's working. So she has come up from the mouth of the Columbia in about March, and in June they hit the Yakima, and now they're here. And when she's here, she's looking for 2-inch gravels, so about this size of gravel that she can easily move with her tail that aren't stuck or embedded in the stream. When she finds that spot that's just perfect, she releases a pheromone or a perfume that floats down to the males. Now you can see we had one extra male move into that for just a minute. He's gone now, but maybe he'll come back. When he smells that pheromone, he swims upstream. And then what do those males start doing? They just like to have other males around when there's one pretty girl? No, they start fighting. And their form of fighting is chasing each other and biting. And that's just, they're not doing a fight to the death. They're just trying to determine who is dominant or who is the biggest, strongest male in that area. Once they figured that out, they will pair up. He will open and flash his jaw, move in close to the female. That's her sign that he's the chosen one. She will dig a little depression with her tail. She flops on her side and digs a little depression. And you'll see a silt bloom come up when she does that. And if we can catch that at the same time, we'll show that to you. And so we have 2 males now. You can see a size difference in the males. So the little one is in the back. That's a Jack. And the bigger male just said, "Get lost, Jack. That's my girl." Okay? So the big male is going to move in next to the female, flash his jaw, tell her he's the chosen one. She digs a little depression. She releases some of her eggs, not all of them. He quickly spills his milk and swims back off downstream to hang out with the guys. She then digs a second time. Why would she dig a second time? Why would she put rocks on top of her eggs? That's right, she's doing that to protect them from predators because those bright orange pink eggs are really easily seen in this environment. So she wants to cover them up, and she'll do that repeated digging 3 or 4 times. By the time she's done, that red is 20 to 30 feet in diameter. It's huge and a foot deep. She literally moves a ton or a dump truck load of gravel to protect those eggs. Crazy. So she's laid somewhere between 3,000 to 5,000 eggs. And then what happens with that female? After about a week, she protects that red from other females digging it up, and then after a week, she dies. Well, what? Man, do all that work, come swimming up here, and then just die? But what's beautiful, if you look around this whole area, this is a super healthy stream area. And that's because her body is giving nutrients to all the trees, bushes, and grasses that are in this area, and not just the plant life. Does anything eat dead fish? Yeah. The black bears will come in here and eat the fish. And what does a bear do in the woods? Yeah. So when they walk away from the river and they go do what they do in the woods, that would be poop. After they poop, they're spreading those nutrients from the river to the areas surrounding the river as well. So not just black bears eat these guys, but bald eagles eat these guys, osprey eat these guys, and even all the way down to, well, what are those annoying things? What are those things? Mosquitoes eat the dead fish. All kinds of insects eat the dead fish. Those are all our detritivores, or things that eat dead things. So all those guys eat the dead fish. The bugs will create more bugs, lay eggs to overwinter, and then in the spring there'll be more little insects for these guys to eat. Oh, we have a lot of activity now. So we have the little male is back, we have 2 more males, and the female is moving into the head of the red. Hopefully she'll be digging here in a moment. But after those eggs are laid, and after, by the way, the males pass away too, nobody's getting out alive in this deal, except for, who gets out alive? eggs that are still buried in the rocks. So those eggs will stay buried in the rocks. In about January, they'll start hatching out of their egg. And when they hatch out, they'll have this great big orange belly, and they're called alevin. March, and gosh, what starts coming out in March? It starts getting nice and warm, the plants start coming out, and also the little bugs start coming out. So remember that the bugs that ate the parents laid eggs, and now we have a bug hatch in March, and what do these little fish want to eat? Bugs! You got it! So they swim to the surface, and they're eating those bugs. Kind of cool little like circle of life thing going on here. Very cool. So they will spend about a year in the river memorizing the scent of the river. Why would that be important to them? Well, we'll come back to that in a little bit. So they spend about a year in the river memorizing the scent of the river, and then they swim out. This is the Cle Elum River. They swim out the Cle Elum to the Yakima. From the Yakima, they go with the flow of the river to the Columbia. From the Columbia, they go all the way out to the, well, where does the Columbia go? Let me think. It takes a little turn by the Tri-Cities, and then it comes back around, and it goes between Washington and Oregon, and it pours out into the Pacific Ocean. That's right. And so these guys will travel all the way to the Pacific Ocean, and then some of them will stop right there. What happens to those guys? Well, they stop right there because they're genetically driven to do that. Their parents were jacks, and they'll stop right there at the estuary. Everybody will stop there and go through a process called smoltification, where they close off their cells and prevent that salt water from going into their bodies. So when they're in the fresh water like this, every cell is open, wide open, and freely exchanging with the environment. That's why pollution affects these guys so strongly, because they're picking up everything. They don't really filter much out. But when they go through smoltification down at the mouth of the Columbia, heading into the ocean, they close off those cells and prevent anything from coming in, because the salt water would dry them out. So those that continue on will go up the coast of British Columbia, Canada, up to Alaska. Some of them stop, though, right there at the mouth of the Columbia, stay at the estuary where there's lots of food, and they'll stay there about 3 months, and then they'll see the big adults returning, and they go, oh, big dudes! I'm gonna follow the big dudes. And they follow the big adults right back up. And those guys stay little because they only stayed out there for 3 months. And remember, one of these guys out here is little, and we call him Jack, because the Jacks stay at the estuary for only 3 months, and then they swim up with the big adults. All the other big adults have gone all the way up to the coast of Alaska and spent a couple of years out in the ocean getting nice and big and fat, and that's what we really want. We want the bigger fish. Okay, not that Jack is bad, but he's just not as big of a fish, and I like to go fishing and catch fish and eat fish, and it's way more fun to eat big fish. All right, so everybody, most of them go out. It's about a 10,000 mile journey, spending a couple of years out by Alaska. Then they swim back to the mouth of the Columbia. Once they hit the mouth of the Columbia, whether they're a little Jack coming back from the estuary or a big adult, everybody stops doing something. What do they stop doing? What's weird about salmon is that they stop eating when they hit that fresh water again, because they're starting to grow those organs that are growing the eggs and the milk. So they don't have room in their bellies for food. They just have to have room for the eggs and the milk. So they'll swim back upstream about 1,000 miles against the current. Now, if any of you have swam against the current, stop and think about that. How far did you swim? Maybe, 20 yards? And you're like, oh, that was really hard swimming against the current. I'm so tired. Oh my gosh, I gotta go get a snack. These guys swim 1,000 miles against the current, not eating, to get here. And once they're here, what does the female get to do? She gets to dig. Remember, we're digging. And how do they find their way here? 95% of the salmon find their way back to the stream that they were hatched in. How do they find that particular stream? They smell their way home. From the mouth of the Columbia, they are following the scent of the bushes, trees, grasses, rocks, soil sediment. Everything gives that river a scent, and they follow it from the mouth of the Columbia. It's amazing. But they spend a year memorizing that scent, so it kind of weighs out. But they get all the way back here, and they start the whole process again. Okay, so here she is digging. We have 2 males, 3 males next to her. And if you have any questions, please contact your teacher. Hopefully we can do a Zoom and I can answer your questions for you. Thank you. Hi, it's Mrs. Bishop again, and here we are above Cle Elum Lake, and we're here to see the sockeye. Now, a lot of these sockeyes were brought in from Osoyoos and Wenatchee Basin by transplant, and Mr. Matala is going to talk to you about that possibly later, but we just want you to make sure you know that a lot of these were brought in as a reintroduction plan. So for the past 100 years before 2013, there were 0 sockeye in the Yakima Basin. 0. But the tribe knew that they'd had them here because they had ancient legends about when the leaves turn red, the fish come back and turn red. So when sockeye come back, they swim around in the lake for a little bit, waiting for the right temperatures to come. And as the leaves start to turn red, they turn from bluebacks, a very dark navy blue color, and they begin to develop a beautiful coloration of the sockeye, which is red with a green head and stripe. And the females will be dark muddy green with a black stripe so that they can blend in with the environment while they're protecting their eggs. So we see these guys very similar life cycle, just a couple of differences. So the female will dig multiple reds, so their smaller reds are about 8 to 10 feet in diameter, and then she'll dig 3 to 5 reds and deposit her eggs in those different reds. Also, she only deposits about 2,000 to 3,000 eggs in total. She's a smaller fish, that's all she can hold. And these guys are like 8 to 12 pounds when we catch them. So a smaller fish overall. Again, the eggs will be buried under the rocks. The males and females will all pass away and feed this very beautiful, healthy environment that we see around us. Is thankful to the keystone species of the sockeye and the Chinook, the salmon. Keystone species meaning that they're everything that holds everything together. In an arch, the top middle stone is called the keystone. It's the one that all the pressure applies to, and that's the one that holds that arch up. We call the salmon the keystone species because they feed all of the environment. And we know that because we find selenium, phosphorus, and nitrogen in the trees that only comes from, it's marine derived, meaning we know it comes from the ocean, and the only way it gets here is in the bodies of the salmon. So the tree roots go down and feed on those rotting carcasses as those fish die away, and so that environment becomes so healthy from these fish. So again, these sockeye lay the eggs in multiple reds, then they'll pass away, feed the environment. The eggs will hatch in January, just like the Chinook. They will stay under those rocks as alevin, again consuming their yolk sac, and then when that's all consumed and they swim up to the surface as fry, when they swim up to the surface here, the very big difference here is that sockeye will swim down to the lake, following the current down to the lake, and then they'll swim around with their mouth open like a whale. How does a whale feed? Think about a whale. It's something the size of a semi-truck. What is a whale eating? A whale is eating tiny little plankton. They filter that through their baleen. And these guys are doing the same thing. Their gill rakers, the little pokey bits on the gills, are longer on sockeye so that as juveniles, they can catch more plankton in the lake. So instead of eating bugs like the Chinook, these guys are eating plankton in the lake. And they'll swim around in the lake for about a year, most of them. Some of them will stay. Sockeye have the ability to stay in that lake from 1 year to multiple years to their entire life. It's really an individual thing. When you guys grow up, you'll see some of your friends stay wherever you graduated from high school. Some of you will go to college in the same state. Some of you will go far away. It's an individual thing, and it's all good choices, okay? But for these sockeye, we kind of want them to go out to the ocean because the only way to get nice and big and fat is to get out to that ocean. So they have to get out to the ocean through Cle Elum Dam. And Cle Elum Dam is actually doing some interesting things. They've created a helix. We'll have a video on that, and that's to let the salmon out in a safer fashion. So salmon get out through Cle Elum Dam, they go down Cle Elum River, down to the Yakima River, down to the Columbia River, and where does the Columbia River pour out of? Talked about this with the Chinook. It also goes to the Pacific Ocean, that's right. And just like the Chinook, these guys can have jacks as well that get caught up in that estuary and stay in the estuary and come back early with the adults returning. Other normal adults will go up to the coast of Alaska and back, again a 10,000 mile journey, again coming back. They're dark blue when they return. They hit that lake, they stay in that lake for a little bit, waiting for the leaves to turn, waiting for the temperatures to cool down so that they can come up and spawn. So a few differences there between the sockeye and the Chinook, mostly in what they're doing in the lake versus the river, what they're eating, and then also the size of the reds and how many eggs they hold. So if you have any questions about the sockeye or the sockeye reintroduction, let me know.